You're listening to the Quint podcast.
India's economic growth is likely to contract by 10.3% in financial year 2020 to 21, falling below Bangladesh in terms of the per capita GDP. That's what the International Monetary Fund, or the IMF, has projected in its latest World Economic Outlook report. And this is a big downward revision from its previous forecast in June, when the IMF had predicted a 4.5% contraction in the current fiscal. However, although India is expected to see the biggest contraction projected among major emerging markets amid the pandemic, the economy is likely to bounce back with an impressive 8.8% growth rate next year and even regain its position as the fastest growing emerging economy. The IMF has also projected that India will surpass Bangladesh again in the year 2021. But how long will it take for the economy to recover to the pre-COVID times? What has India done so far, and what more measures can the government take to speed up the process of the recovery? In this podcast, you'll hear from IMF Chief Economist Geeta Gopinath and Uday Kotak, the Managing Director of Kotak Mahindra Bank. You're tuned in to The Big Story, the podcast where we dissect the headline-making news for you. And I'm your host, Shalpuri. It goes without saying that India's lockdown was one of the harshest and the longest ones undertaken by any country in the world. India was already facing an economic slowdown when the pandemic hit, but while the lockdown couldn't control the infections in the country, the complete shutdown of the economy affected employment and businesses immensely, causing the sharpest contraction in a quarter since the year 1996, with India's GDP plunging by 23.9% in the June quarter this year compared to the same period in the year 2019. And now, with the IMF revising its forecast for India, the question is, how much crisis is India in right now? Listen in to IMF's Chief Economist Geeta Gopinath as she spoke to the Quint's editorial director Sanjay Pagalia on how long will it take for the country to regain normalcy.
Long, because firstly, the health crisis is not over. So we are still living with the virus. We don't have an end to the pandemic. And as long as that's the case, people are going to practice social distancing, and we're going to see a longer time for recoveries in contact intensive sectors like, restaurants and hospitality, tourism. And so unless we are able to end that either through better ways of managing to live with the virus or through vaccines or treatments, it's going to take a long time. And it's also going to be an uneven ascent, because what we are seeing is we're seeing low-income workers, low-skilled workers getting much harder than high-skilled workers. We're seeing increases in abject poverty. Up to 90 million will be added to extreme poverty just this year. And also it's uneven across the world. You're seeing emerging and developing economies, excluding China, that are projected to suffer more during this pandemic than advanced economies. So everybody is in a bad shape. So the return back to 2019 levels for most countries will have to wait until 2022. In some countries, it'll have to wait until 2023. So this is why this is a very slow recovery.
Following the release of the data, Congress leader Rahul Gandhi took a jibe at the government, saying that it was, quote, a solid achievement of 6 years of the BJP's hate-filled cultural nationalism, end quote. And government sources were quick to hit back at Rahul Gandhi, saying that in the year 2019, India's GDP in terms of purchasing power parity was 11 times more than that of Bangladesh, while the population was 8 times more. But let's talk about the kind of measures that the government has taken so far to boost the economy. Recently, on 12th October, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman unveiled a Rs 73,000 crore worth plan ahead of the festive season to boost demand, consumer spending and capital expenditure. This comes after the previous stimulus package worth 21 trillion rupees, which most experts believe wasn't entirely successful in giving the market the much-needed boost. So the festive stimulus includes Rs 20,000 crores on leave travel concession or LTC vouchers for government employees, Rs 8,000 crores on prepaid special festival advances, Rs 12,000 crores capital investment by states with 50-year interest-free loans from the centre, and an additional capital spending of rupees 25,000 crores on infrastructure projects. Before the centre's moves, the RBI had also announced a slew of measures to reduce the borrowing cost to revive the economy. But the question is, what more is needed to revive the economy? Uday Kotak, MD of Kotak Mahindra Bank, stressed on the implementation of medium-term solutions instead of short-term solutions.
So, सबसे पहले मेरे हिसाब से जो बड़ा पैकेज दिया, फिस्कल पैकेज फॉर बॉटम ऑफ द पिरामिड, वो अच्छा था. साइमल्टेनियसली जो मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी एक्शंस लिए गए, जिससे ब्याज के दर बहुत से कम किए, वो जरूरत था. लिक्विडिटी बढ़ा दी, इसलिए बहुत सारे बिजनेसेस बच गए हैं बिकॉज ऑफ दैट. थर्ड, इन भारत की एक्सटर्नल अकाउंट सिचुएशन अच्छी है. Low oil and lower gold import has helped India on the external front. तो unlike 2013, ये इस समय भारत की करंट अकाउंट पोजीशन, बैलेंस ऑफ पेमेंट्स पोजीशन बहुत ही सदर है. चैलेंजेस क्या है? चैलेंजेस फिस्कल डेफिसिट और साइज ऑफ आवर फिस्कल डेफिसिट, सेंटर प्लस स्टेट्स. ये प्री कोविड भी जरा हाई थी और इन ड्यूरिंग कोविड पीरियड बढ़ेगी. तो मेरे हिसाब से 12-13% कंबाइंड फिस्कल डेफिसिट हम पहुंच गए हैं. जिस तौर से आगे देख रहा हूं और जरूरत है फॉर मोर फिस्कल स्टिमुलस इन द फेस्टिवल सीजन, मेरे हिसाब से लक्ष्मण रेखा ऑन फिस्कल डेफिसिट सेंटर प्लस स्टेट्स कंबाइंड शुड बी अराउंड 15% एंड उससे ऊपर संभाल के जाना चाहिए. और ये 15% भी हम फ्यूचर जनरेशन से बोरो करके आज की जनरेशन के सर्वाइवल के लिए कर रहे हैं. तो हमें सबको याद रखना होगा कि जितना बोरोइंग आज कर रहे हैं, नेक्स्ट जनरेशन से पैसा लेके आज खर्च कर रहे हैं. लेकिन आज कोविड टाइम है, जरूरत है, सर्वाइवल का फाइट है और हमें करना ही चाहिए. और साथ साथ ये पूरी जो स्टिम्युलस है मस्ट मूव टुवर्ड्स डिमांड एंड इवन मोर for bottom of the pyramid. Therefore, demand has to come from the bottom of the pyramid. और इस पॉइंट पे हम जब देखते हैं इकोनॉमिक नंबर्स, अप्रैल में और सितंबर अक्टूबर इकोनॉमी में रिकवरी दिख रही है और ये प्रीटी सिग्निफिकेंट है. आप देखिए, कार्स देखिए, टू व्हीलर्स देखिए, एंटायर डिजिटल इकोनॉमी देखिए, ई कॉमर्स देखिए, ट्रैक्टर्स देखिए, कंस्ट्रक्शन इक्विपमेंट, रोड कंस्ट्रक्शन इक्विपमेंट, ये सब सेक्टर्स अच्छा कर रहे हैं. साथ में फार्मास्यूटिकल्स, आईटी, सो बहुत सारे सेक्टर्स आर एक्चुअली डूइंग वेल. हाउएवर देयर इज सम सेक्टर्स जहां प्रॉब्लम है. एयरलाइंस, होटल्स, रेस्टोरेंट्स, जनरल सर्विसेज, ये सब सेक्टर्स में चैलेंजेस है. और कोई भी बिजनेस को आप पूछिए, उनका फोकस है कॉस्ट कहां कंट्रोल कर सकते हैं. अगर ये माइंडसेट रहा तो पेन तो होगा, बिकॉज किसी की कॉस्ट और किसी की इनकम है. सो ये जो बैलेंस है, देयरफॉर ओवरऑल जीडीपी सर्टेनली इंपैक्टेड है, सेंसिटिव सेक्टर्स जास्ती इंपैक्टेड है और इसलिए हमें इन सेक्टर को सर्वाइवल का चांस देना चाहिए इन द होप कि 6 to 9 months from now things will be better. So I support the government, जो किया है अच्छा किया है. फेस्टिवल सीजन में थोड़ा पुश देने की संभावना है और उसके साथ आई ऑल्सो कॉम्प्लीमेंट रिजर्व बैंक ऑफ इंडिया फॉर अ वेरी प्रोएक्टिव मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी एंड सेंसिटिविटी टू द इंडियन इकोनॉमी.
Ms. Gopinath also says that the Indian government has taken extensive measures to ensure that the economy has not collapsed completely, but there's more room to provide direct stimulus to both urban poor and migrant workers.
So the government has taken considerable steps. On the fiscal side, there's about 7% of GDP that's been deployed. That's really sizable. But if you look at the mix of measures that they have taken, it's been mostly measures that help with liquidity, so in the form of lending, lending support, helping with credit guarantees, and much less in the form of more direct spending, which has been more closer to around 2% of GDP, which is what we're seeing around the world, is that these direct support measures, which put income into the hands of low-income households or into SMEs, seem to have a much bigger impact in terms of bringing back a faster recovery. So we think that there is space to do more on that front in terms of stimulus, the more direct stimulus. expanding it to both urban poor and rural and migrant workers. And also some of these schemes have expired or are going to expire, and I think there's scope to increase it. On the monetary policy side, again, many significant measures have been taken. We see scope for more monetary easing, especially after this inflationary spike comes down, some of which will be transitory because there's still very low levels of demand, overall demand. So there's more that can be done there. And the third is in terms of public investment. The government has announced very considerable packages on that front, and that's a very welcome step. That can also help with bringing about a faster recovery and also with creating jobs. We believe there is scope for India to do some more, in terms of providing more direct support to low-income households and also to SMEs. Now, to be clear, of course, countries like India have more fiscal constraints than advanced economies do, so there is restrictions on how much you can spend. But that said, we believe there is scope to do some more.
You can also find the full interviews on the Quint's website and also the Quint's YouTube channel. Do check them out. But moving on, the IMF has also predicted extreme inequality and poverty arising out of this pandemic, which is likely to have lasting effects on people's standards of living. In India, we're already seeing these effects take shape among the poorer and the underprivileged sections. And Ms. Gopinath says that there's a lot to be remedied, including access to education and health, the absence of which is a hit to the human capital. She also says that there's a need for countries to work in a close collaboration in the health sector.
Yeah, these are very difficult trends that we are seeing everywhere in the world. Now, countries that have a lot of fiscal space, you are providing, very considerable income support. So, for instance, in the US, the lost income was more than compensated, which is why you've seen a faster recovery. But I think going forward, there will be several challenges. First, countries will have to plan for having a stronger social safety net, not just right now, but going forward, to ensure that you can reduce inequality. We're very worried about the lost education that we're seeing in many parts of the world, because distance learning is not exactly something that works in many places. And that is a real hit to human capital. That has to be remedied. And so these schemes, many of these schemes will be required for a longer time. And governments will have to find the resources in their budget to make it available on higher health spending, higher on education. All of this will be needed. So, they have several steps have been taken, if not in a coordinated manner, but at least in a synchronized manner. What we have seen is many governments in the world have deployed considerable fiscal and monetary policy support. And that because of that, that's helped the world. In March, for instance, there was the risk of having a big financial crisis. And that was, mitigated because of the very large measures taken by central banks around the world. So that's been helpful. Multilateral institutions like the IMF have given a considerable amount of support to countries. We provided financing to 81 countries at record speeds, backed by our members. Now, that said, we see scope for much more that is needed. One is on the health front, which is that there needs to be greater collaboration to end the health crisis. The problem is less about science at this point, because we will very likely see vaccines and treatments and better testing, all of which can help end the pandemic. But the economics is not that great, because we need to have sufficient production and distribution to all parts of the world to end this pandemic everywhere. And that requires much closer collaboration. Second, there are many countries who entered this crisis with high levels of debt. They don't have the finances to do the necessary spending on health spending, on protecting people's lives and livelihoods. And here again, international support is needed in terms of concessional financing, in terms of debt relief, and in some cases, just outright debt restructuring. So much more will be needed, and because this crisis is not over, and we are looking to the international community to do a lot more.
If you like listening to this episode, please subscribe to the Big Story playlist for episodic updates. We're live on Apple, Google Podcast, Spotify, JioSaavn, and most of the other popular podcast streaming platforms. For other podcasts, please log on to the Quint website and check out the podcast section. For any feedback, shoot an email to podcasts@thequint.com.
Thanks for listening. Log on to the Quint's website and check out our other podcasts.